Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you once again. Hope you had a great week and had a great Labor Day weekend and unofficial end to summer. We're hoping that that's not the case, at least with climate change. It kind of promises an extended summer, right? In New York City today, the real feel was almost 100 degrees, which was unheard of years ago. You know, when we entered September and Labor Day weekend, the temperatures automatically told you that you were coming to the end of the summer. Today, tomorrow, and yesterday felt like the beginning. Anyway, like I said, I'm your host, Julian Perry. Again, it's a pleasure to be here with you. And this week, I'm going to chat with you a little bit about term limits. And I'll tell you when I come back what prompted me, what article I read, and what my thoughts are about that. But I think it's really important for us as a society, as we look at leadership for our future, how this matters. So I'll be right back to chat with you in a couple. So welcome back to the 247 Real Talk podcast. Again, it's a pleasure to be here with you. And on this quick episode, I'm going to try to make it quick. We're going to talk about term limits. And I'm looking here, so bear with me as I look over to those of you who watch me on YouTube, as I look over to my screen here. The print is kind of small. I'm trying to fit a lot on one page, so I don't have it too big. But basically, the headline says, Haley, which is Nikki Haley, who's running for president, running for the nomination for the Republican Party, says Haley doubles down on cognitive tests as White House older lawmakers bristle. And I think over time, there's been several occurrences with President Biden, with, I think, Mitch McConnell, that have prompted not just Nikki Haley, but many other people to, sort of say, hey, what's going on here? And here's what she says. If elected president, Nikki Haley says she will seek mental competency tests for federal elected officials over 75 years of age. The former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations proposal is receiving pushback from older lawmakers, but not from all. That makes sense. Asked about Haley's proposal Thursday, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said despite his age, Biden has met the arduous demands of his job and delivered major legislative victories. The Trump campaign did not respond to an email Thursday seeking comment. So I'm sort of going to add to that and sort of set the grounds for this conversation by looking at the list of, and I'm not going to go through in terms of where they House of Representatives or Senate. I just want to, I'm not even going to go through whether they're Republican or Democrat. What's important is I want to sort of give you an idea of who's leading our country, and then we'll chat a little bit about the pros and cons. We have, and this is public information, so I'm not violating anyone's right to privacy here. Charles E. Grassley, 89 years old. Dianne Feinstein, 89 years old. Bernie Sanders, 80 years old. Mitch McConnell, 80 years old. Benjamin Cardin, 79. Jim Risch, 79. Richard Durbin, 78. Angus King, 78. Edward Markey, 76. Richard Blumenthal, 76. Mitt Romney, 76. Peter Welch, 75. Mazie Hirono, 75. Joe Manchin, 75. Jian Shaheen, 75. Thomas Carper, 75. Jack Reed, 73. Ron Wyden, 73. Elizabeth Warren, 73. John Boozman, 72. Debbie Stabenow, 72. Charles Schumer, 72. Patty Murray, 72. I'm going to stop at 70, okay? Roger Wicker, 71. Michael D. Crapo, 71. John Kennedy, 71. Deb Fisher, 71. John Hickenlooper, 70. Rick Stott, 70. John Corning, 70. John Barrasso, 70. Susan Collins, 70. Sherrod Brown, 70. Marsha Blackburn, 70. I'm gonna leave off the rest that are below that. So we're gonna use 70 as a cutoff age, not for any reason other than I'm gonna start from the bottom of the list now and go to 50. And so we have John Ossoff, 35. J.D. Vance, 38. K.D. Britt, 40. Josh Hawley, 43. Mark Wayne Mullen, 45. Tom Cotton, 45. Kristen Cinema, 46. Eric Schmitz, 47. Christopher Murphy, 49. Alex Padilla, 49. Ben Sass, 50. Todd Young, 50. Brian Schatz, 50. And Ben Ray Lujan, 50. So you see, right, the comparison from the top to bottom there. So actually, I have two lists. I do have the both branches. So let's continue for a little while here. I'm going back to the top. This is representatives now. Grace Napolitano, 86. Eleanor Holmes, 80. Holmes Norton, 85. Harold Rogers, 85. Bill Pascrelli, 85. Maxine Waters, 84. Sterny Hoyer, 83. James Clyburn, is it? 82. Nancy Pelosi, 82. Danny Davis, 81. John Carter, 81. Anna Eshod, 80. Frederica Wilson, 80. Rosa DeLauro, 79. Virginia Fox, 79. Kay Granger, 79. Doris Matsui, 78. John Shakowski, 78. Emmanuel Cleaver, 78. David Scott, 77. Jim Beard, 77. Bonnie Watson Coleman, 77. John Garamendi, 77. Marcy Captor, 76. Lloyd Doggett, 76. Barbara Lee, 76. Alma Adams, 76. C.A. Dutch Rupersberger, 76. Al Green, 75. Robert Scott, 75. Sanford D. Bishop Jr., 75. Jared Nadler, 75. Zoe Lofgren, 75. Bill Posey, 75. Amuna Amata Coleman Radwagen, 75. Joe Wilson, 75. Jack Bergman, 75. Luis Frankel, 74. Bernie Thompson, 74. Earl Blumenauer, 74. John B. Larson, 74. Raul M. Grijavia, 74. Mike Kelly, 74. Brian Bobbin, 74. Kwesi Mfum, 74. Paul Tonko, 73. Steve Cohen, 73. Tom Cole, 73. Roger Williams, 73. I'm going to stop at 70. I'm doing this for a reason. Richard Neal, 73. Diane Webster, 73. Mike Simpson, 72. Sylvia Garcia, 72. Diane Titus, 72. Joyce Beatty, 72. Gerald Connolly, 72. Carol Miller, 72. Sheila Jackson Lee, 72. Michael C. Berger, 72. Donald S. Baer Jr., 72. Vern Buchanan, 71. Mike Thompson, 71. Frank Malone Jr., 71. Gwen Moore, 71. Tim Wahlberg, 71. I know you're getting the picture here. You're probably saying, when is this guy going to stop? I'm not even going to go through the 70s. I'm going to stop at the last 71. Rick Allen, 71. And Burgess Owen, 71. You see my point. We have a nation that is a quilt, a melting pot of cultures, of what do I want to say? Industries, a melting pot of brilliant minds, of all ethnicities, of all that come from all different places, from the medical field and from the legal fields and all different industries and professions. And those minds, many of them younger than anyone that I called there from 70 above, many of them are running massive companies across the United States and doing great things. The point I'm getting at is, as the generation gets older, the younger generation should be coming up in volume to fill those slots. But in order to do that, in order to keep our legal, judicial, and all these systems current, dealing with our lives as they are today, in order to have people who are making laws and sort of legally controlling our lives relevant to how we live today, they've got to understand today's world. I'm no spring chicken, fine, but if you look at the age group that I called off there, we basically have a country that's run by people who have figured at this point they're no longer there by election, even though they go to the polls. Some part of me tells me that, and the way they behave is that they're there by right. And once they get in there and they wield that power and all the perks, the security, the monies, the engagements of that make them automatically wealthy, all these things are so difficult to give up that I believe that their primary concern, their primary goal, is to stay there for those reasons, because it's obviously not for us. It's obviously not to stay there to make a difference. These guys in Congress, Republican and Democrat, they're fighting each other like cats and dogs every single day. It's like we're standing there like a child, standing there hungry, waiting for their dinner. And mommy and daddy are having an argument over what the child should eat. And as the child sits there crying, hungry, belly grumbling, stomach in an uproar, the parents are arguing about the baby's food, oblivious to the fact that their goal is to feed that baby. We in society are the babies. The people we elect to Congress, we elect to Senate, the people we elect to everywhere in Washington, D.C., from the president down, are the parents in that analogy. They're supposed to be focused on feeding us. They're too busy battling each other. They're too busy holding on to power. And the fact is, because there are no term limits, they know that depending on where they represent and their constituents, they can stay there for life. Then, unless some scandal or something really, or some upstart who really has the power comes up and really, and it's very rare that can kick them out, they've got a job for life. After a few terms, they become like, he's going to win anyway. They become like a fixture, like a pillar of stone. And the fact is that no one in Washington seems to understand the plight of the majority of the people. I go back to, and I'm going to use many subjects that I've spoken about over the last two podcasts. I got my biggest supporters are going to laugh because I'm going to lead with this. I'm going to lead with student loans. These people who got PPP loans, they got PPP loans. They got them forgiven, over $1 million. Several people in Congress are same people who fought against you and I getting $20,000 or $10,000 loan forgiveness for 45.3, I think, is around there, million people who have student loans. There's a good, I think, 20-something million who would have benefited from that, either completely wiping out their balance, or benefited by giving them a little breathing room as they struggle in this society that you struggle to get a job because of some fields are saturated. You struggle to get a job because we live in a country that in certain industries we have immigrants, and including myself, who've come to this country and we're all competing for the jobs. You struggle to get a job because you're a person of color. That's a big one, systemic racism. And they could have come together and shown us in unity that they care about us. But instead, they fought and went all the way to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, and I want you to understand this, I want you to listen to me carefully, listen to my voice. Those who are on YouTube, look at me and look at what I'm saying. Listen to me. I was made aware, and I'm pretty sure the information was accurate, that right now, because of the war in Ukraine, if you manage to leave Ukraine and come to the United States, you immediately get all the benefits that an American citizen would get. I'm talking about things like, the Medicaid and the SNAP and all those things automatically. In addition, we've spent so much money, well over $1 trillion in Ukraine now, that in the beginning they used to announce every time they were giving aid to Ukraine. They don't do it anymore because the number's embarrassing. Not embarrassing in the sense that we're helping people, but embarrassing when you're willing to spend that abroad, but you're not willing to invest in your own people at home. You're willing to fight and have a political battle to make sure you make a clear delineation between Democrat and Republican for power and control of this country. One party seeking to do to implement their ideology. The other seeking to implement their own ideology. Somewhere in the middle, we have a fight that with these two sides that doesn't benefit any of us. Many of us have been the subject of systemic racism, period. We've seen what has gone on in this country over the last 4 or 5 years. We've had so many things that don't represent who we are as Americans. America is a melting pot. And I hate to say this, and some people may look at me and say, you know what, you don't have the right to say that because I'm a man of color. But let me tell you something. If you go out on the streets and you walk around America, if you do a poll as to the ethnicities or the ethnic breakdown in America, America is a melting pot. It is a quilt. And it represents every race, creed, and color on this entire planet. While we hear things like white supremacy, it has no place in America. Days of old when there were things like slavery, yes, right now it doesn't. And I'll tell you this, in Generation Z, the generation of today, I applaud them. I admire them for their ability not to see or differentiate with color anymore. They're more interracial and mixed marriages and relationships and friendships in Generation Z than any time I've seen in all the years I've been in this country and all the years that history suggests. So think about it. If we start to get politicians saturating Washington with great ideas who understand Generation Z and what we need in this time for us to survive and thrive, all of our lives, including those elderly people, including those in Washington at the 80s and they're almost 90 years old, they too will benefit. Because I believe the Generation Z will not only take care of Generation Z, but they'll take care of all the other generations above them, including the elderly, including people who need services as they get to a certain age. Instead, we're stuck with people who feel they have the right to the throne, and their family members, in some cases, are heir to that throne, that state, the Senate, the representative, or the senator. I mean, look how twisted we've become. Here we are, people who are claiming in the face of nation. And you know, when you sit down and look, I try not to look at too much politics on TV anymore, because when you look at these politicians who've been sitting there, look at you in your face and lie. We have a situation in New York where there's a representative, George Santos. Right now, I think there's 13 federal charges against him. And I think I heard on the radio this morning, he's looking to make a deal because the feds just came up with a whole ton more charges. My point is, Republicans, this is a Republican. At minimum, the Republican Party, based on the lack of ethics, morals, decency, and trustworthiness of this gentleman, the Republican Party should have themselves initiated a process to remove him. And they could have worked something out, I'm hoping, or come to some agreement where there's another Republican who would have taken his place. I know their fear is if they get rid of him, there has to be some sort of interim election, and their concern is losing and even getting a smaller margin in the House of Representatives. So politics trumps decency. Politics trumps ethics. Politics trumps righteousness where our politicians are concerned. You want to start dealing with them? We need term limits. You want to start finding out who is that guy that's running this business who might be more attracted or might find it more attractive to go into government for a term or two and bring their influence and then go back to their lives? Maybe. You want to open up more opportunities for the minds of today, brilliant minds of today? Term limits. Don't give these people the right to sit there on their thrones till death do us part. It's not that kind of marriage. Allow them 2 4-year terms, and then you got to go. It's amazing how you look at a lot of countries in the Caribbean, a lot of islands and smaller societies, yes, but I know of certain places where you have to retire at 55. You have to retire at 55 for many reasons. One, because their quality of life is a big thing, and they believe that you shouldn't be working to the point where when you do retire, you live 2 years and die. They want you to work, have a good life, retire with full pension, full benefits, and live your life and have years ahead of you to enjoy what you've worked for. In this country, we tend to do the latter, right? We tend to hold on to power and money, and then you find out that we die while we're still in office. They have a lot of term limits in their societies. Not all of them, but many of them. For the same reason, too, that there's a need for the system to be designed to force a change in the fundamentals of ideology. The ideology of the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, Independent Party, Libertarian Party can be the same on the surface. But each person brings their view of that ideology and brings a different way of implementing it to have a different effect. The overall effect of having brilliant minds back and forth, adding to our lives, the quality of life, there's a benefit to that. Well, there's a downside to everything too, right? But think about it. If there's a downside, we don't have to put up with this guy, even if he manages to convince people that he's the best or she's the best, even after they suck at it. After the second term, they're gone. We don't have to motivate people and mobilize to force them out of office and deal with the slinging of the dirt back and forth because they have a chance of going to a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth term. Now, right now, I'm only talking about the Senate, the House of Representatives. I know this conversation extends to the Supreme Court, and that has been brought up many times. I think that's a bigger issue that needs to be really thought out. Here's why. I think one of the benefits of not having term limits on judges is that it likely guarantees more consistency throughout their career. It's not someone who says, I'm a judge, and when my term limits are up, I don't want to retire yet. I want a job. This company out there is going to offer me a job with a big paycheck. So if a case came before me, I'm kind of going to be biased to swing it their way. I think part of the no term limits for judges and the for life for judges is so that whomever you get supposedly should be who you have for life. The problem is that may be true for fundamentally, but the way these people are elected to office or appointed to office, not elected, appointed to office, is a biased way, is a political way, is an ideological way along party lines. I will never forget when President Barack Obama had the ability or the opportunity to appoint one more Supreme Court judge. But the Democrats did not have control of the House and the Senate. And Mitch McConnell and the others made sure that they basically did a stalemate and made sure that there was no appointment of a judge until Obama finished his term. Once President Trump got into office, guess what? Now we can appoint him. They did that unfairly. And here's why I say unfairly. Since the Supreme Court judge is for life, it is sort of a luck of the draw when you're president whether you get to appoint one or not. And as far as I know, historically, there's only been two ways it has happened. I mean, there is a third option of an impeachment and all these things, but that hasn't happened where we've had the ability to replace a Supreme Court judge that way. We have one by retirement, or we have it by death. It's sort of, however life plays out, if you're president, you get that opportunity. That should be the same across the board. If it happens when you're president, then it's your right to appoint that one, irrespective of Democrat, irrespective of Republican. The fact that we have a bunch of people in government who play the game to make sure Barack Obama could not elect a judge, so that they want to make sure that the Supreme Court did not become too liberal. Look, I've said to you time and time again, I'm not even sure I'm independent. I don't know what I am. I don't align with any specific party. Not Republican, not Democrat, not independent, because I believe that each one of them has value and each one of them has nonsense. And I think that I personally would have preferred a system where a candidate comes up, you have two candidates who have debates, or how many candidates, eventually we're down to two. They have two different ideologies that are a mixture of something from Democrat, something Republican, whatever. They call them opposing ideologies. And the entire population votes for one or the other based on what they present, their track record, all the things that you do in campaigning. And once they win, then they can form their party of like-minded ideologists, right? I mean, or people of like-minded ideology. That's the way I would prefer. Now, I'm sure there are downsides to that we can debate. But the point is, here we are in a system where people are going to filibuster and do all these things to make sure that the right that one gets in history is taken away from you, so they can keep the imbalance. It's not a balance, an imbalance on the Supreme Court to favor their ideology. How about this? How about we have a Supreme Court with 11 judges? How about we have a Supreme Court with 12 judges, maybe? Since we have dominant parties, right? 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, 1 independent, and 1 libertarian. So we have a swing vote that's from neither party. I'm sure that has its pitfalls too, but it's got to be better than things that we've seen happen so far with Roe versus Wade. Look, I don't get into the Roe versus Wade argument because I believe that that's totally under control of women, and it should be. It's their bodies. But I've heard their arguments, and from me so far in the circles I've been, places I've been, there seems to be more people who are against that Supreme Court decision than for. And I think that irrespective of all this noise of our current, of President Biden and ex-President Trump, and the parties coming up, election, and the court cases and all of that, I think America may be shocked. I think America may be shocked because no matter what, the things that will decide this election might actually put aside a lot of that noise, and it might come down to decisions that have been made against people in this country who are people of color, people of females, female gender, but people and LGBTQ community who have been voted against, who've had people turn their backs on them, who have been put down, but who have a voice when it votes. I would suspect that we're going to have a massive record turnout. I'm going to suspect that all this nonsense about MAGA and Biden and those two who are making this all about one person Trump and one person Biden, I think the majority in the society who are people of color, who are minorities, are going to rock the boat. You can't take away but so much from someone, expect them to sit in the corner and not react. And come November next year, that's when they'll have a voice to speak. I feel it. I could be wrong, but I feel that what people are focusing on is not what's going to decide it. And in many ways, because of the decisions that have already been made, in people's minds, it's already been decided. Don't go by polls. Don't go by, these polls are orchestrated so that they target a certain demographic and a certain ideology to make the polls seem lopsided one way or the other, or even however they want to turn out to be. They know who they poll. We've seen them fail over and over again because the fact is that, again, they're part of campaigning strategy to make things seem as they're not. So I didn't want to digress too much about it, in that bit of my sharing my thoughts. But the bottom line is, maybe we need to start making noise about term limits. Term limits for members of the House of Representatives. Term limits for the Senate. We already have term limits for the presidency. And once we get those, then maybe we need to take a deeper dive, a deeper look into the Supreme Court, and as a nation decide if it has value and it still has value in them being there for life, then maybe we need to change the makeup of the court slightly. I don't believe in ballooning the number of members on the Supreme Court. I think you'll never get to a decision that way. But I think that there are ways to balance it out where if a Democratic Supreme Court judge retires, the successor has to come from a Democratic party. If Republican retires or whatever, it has to come from the Republican Party. Keep those numbers the same, and then if necessary, put some deal breakers or some swears in the middle. Now there'll still be room for corruption. We know this, but right now it just seems that we had a situation where men made life-changing decisions for women in this country. That's just not right. People are thinking more about their feelings than using their abilities and their office to understand what's going on out there in the world, what's going on out there in the country that is impacted by their decisions. We are living in interesting times because there are difficult things we're dealing with. There are violent things we're dealing with. There's a government, political bodies behaving like we've never seen before. There are members of society threatening, trying to kill other members of society over a candidate whom many of them have never met or met from afar at a rally, and probably doesn't care one bit about them if they drop dead tomorrow. The point is, we've lost our way. And they have won because they have managed to get people in society spending money on signs and flags and going to rallies instead of taking that money and investing it in their family, in their homes, or in a charity, helping someone who's ill, a sick child, using it in a way that benefits society, not one person. I think we'll have more conversation about term limits in the future and as we get closer to elections. It's an interesting time, and it has forced me to pay attention to the news because each and every day there's something new, something different, and something more shocking and more unacceptable but accepted than the day before. So we'll keep the conversation going. We'll look for what's coming next. But for you and for me, as for us, we've got to survive. We've got to live. We've got to look out for each other, look around us, see who needs help. Pay attention, listen, be kind, understand that what's going on in Washington, we cannot allow that to have such an impact on our lives that we forget who we are to each other. As always, it's my absolute pleasure to have this conversation with you, to share another podcast episode. I think this is around episode 168. I ask you, please do subscribe, do share it. I don't have a massive audience on the YouTube. I have a larger audience on the audio, because I guess people are more familiar with that, and that's the way I started. But I would love to build this podcast into thousands and tens of thousands, have a massive conversation that changes things in our lives. I look at many podcasts, and I'm not knocking anybody, but some of these things have got millions of subscribers are a whole lot of nothing that will do nothing in our lives but maybe make us laugh for 2 seconds. If we want to change that makes us sit back and laugh and sit back and smile as we watch the next generation grow, we've got to be responsible and make it happen now. Once again, thank you, As always, it has been my honor and my privilege, and I'm so very humbled and thankful for your support. Please have a great weekend and a great week ahead. Until the next time, do take care of yourselves and each other.